Hey, and welcome to Puzzlehead. This channel is all about engaging stories with clever twists, unexpected turns, and moments that will pull you in emotionally. So, if you enjoy drama, surprises, and endings that truly hit, then you're in the right place. Subscribe and join us for stories full of secrets, intense moments, and satisfying outcomes. Now, don't forget to turn on notifications. The next puzzle is about to begin.
The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered onto the garage floor at exactly 11:47 p.m. I was elbow deep in the engine of my '98 Mustang when I heard it, Monica's laugh drifting through the thin walls of our suburban palace. Not her polite dinner party laugh or her fake phone with clients laugh. This was different, personal, close, the kind of laugh that used to be reserved for me, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and my wife actually acknowledged my existence. I wiped my hands on an old rag and crept closer to the door connecting the garage to the kitchen. Through the crack, I could see Monica, pacing in her silk pajamas, phone pressed to her ear like a lifeline. "You're terrible," she whispered and giggled again. "Ethan, what if someone hears?" Ethan. That would be Ethan Blackwood, her boss at Paragon Innovations. The same Ethan who'd been mentioned roughly 47 times in the past month during our increasingly rare dinner conversations. The same Ethan who apparently needed to discuss quarterly projections at midnight on a Tuesday. If laughter could add years to your life, my wife would outlive me by decades. Too bad none of those laughs had been directed at my jokes lately. I pulled out my phone and hit record, catching the tail end of her conversation. "I can't wait either. Same place tomorrow. The Riverside Hotel has that new suite." Her voice trailed off as she walked toward the living room. The Riverside Hotel. How romantic. How original. How absolutely, devastatingly predictable. I stood there in my garage, surrounded by the honest smell of motor oil and the dishonest echo of my wife's promises, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, that would come later. This was something sharper, cleaner, the kind of clarity that comes when you finally understand the rules of the game you've been losing. Monica swept back into the kitchen, practically glowing. She jumped when she saw me standing in the doorway. "Jesus, David, you scared me." She clutched her phone to her chest. "What are you doing lurking around? Lurking in my own house? That's a new one." I held up my greasy hands. "Just working on the car." "Who was on the phone?" "Work stuff. You know how it is." She turned away, but not before I caught the flush creeping up her neck. Some of us have demanding careers. Ah, yes, the demanding career. Monica's rise through the ranks at Paragon had been meteoric. From junior HR coordinator to head of human resources in 18 months. Purely based on merit, I'm sure. Nothing to do with those late-night strategy sessions with the CEO. "Right, work stuff, at midnight." I watched her face in the reflection of the microwave door. Must be some project. "The Henderson acquisition is complex, David. You wouldn't understand." There it was. The dismissal I'd grown so familiar with. "You wouldn't understand, David. It's a corporate thing, David. Maybe if you'd finished college, David." "You're right," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm just a simple guy who owns a successful auto repair business. What could I possibly understand about complex acquisitions?" Monica's jaw tightened. "That's not what I meant." "Sure it isn't." I turned back toward the garage. "I'll let you get back to your work stuff." As I walked away, I heard her mutter something about me being paranoid. Paranoid. That was rich, coming from someone who'd started password protecting her phone 3 months ago and claimed it was for security purposes. I spent the next hour pretending to work on the Mustang while my mind raced. 20 years of marriage. 20 years of building a life together, raising our daughter Maddie, creating something I thought was solid. Apparently, I'd been building a house of cards in a hurricane. The smart thing would be to confront her directly. Demand the truth, hash it out like adults. But I'd never been accused of being smart, just thorough. The next morning, Monica left for work with unusual enthusiasm, humming some pop song I didn't recognize. She'd dressed carefully, the blue dress that hugged her curves, the expensive heels I'd bought her for Christmas, war paint for a corporate warrior or something else entirely. "Have a good day, honey," she called out, not bothering to wait for my response. 15 minutes later, I was in my truck, following her silver BMW through the morning traffic of Willow Heights. Our neighborhood was the kind of place where everyone had perfectly manicured lawns and perfectly maintained facades. The American dream in suburban form, complete with homeowners, association bylaws, and the lingering scent of hidden dysfunction. Monica's route to Paragon Innovations was burned into my memory after years of carpools and forgotten lunch deliveries. So when she took the exit toward downtown instead of the business district, my suspicions crystallized into certainty. The Riverside Hotel sat on the banks of Miller Creek, all glass and steel and understated elegance. The kind of place where affairs went to feel sophisticated. I parked across the street and watched Monica's BMW pull into the valet circle. She emerged like she owned the place, striding through the revolving doors with the confidence of someone who believed she was untouchable. 5 minutes later, a black Tesla Model S pulled up. The man who got out was tall, silver-haired, and wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Ethan Blackwood in the flesh. CEO of Paragon Innovations, husband to some socialite named Vanessa, and apparently the reason my wife had rediscovered her capacity for midnight giggles. I watched them embrace in the lobby through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Not a business handshake, not a professional hug. The kind of embrace that suggested they were intimately familiar with each other's geography. They disappeared into the elevator together, and I sat in my truck feeling like the world's biggest fool. All those late nights, all those weekend team-building exercises, all those times Monica had come home smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. The smart thing would be to drive home, process this information like a rational adult, maybe call a marriage counselor. Instead, I walked into the hotel gift shop and bought a pack of cheater bumper stickers they sold as gag gifts. 20 minutes later, I'd slapped one under the rear bumper of Ethan's Tesla, right where he'd never think to look, but everyone behind him in traffic would get a good view. Petty? Absolutely. Satisfying? More than I cared to admit. I was walking back to my truck when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw your wife tonight. You deserve better, V. V, as in Vanessa? As in Ethan's wife? Well, this was getting interesting. The text from V haunted me for 3 days. I'd stare at it during coffee breaks at the shop, turning it over in my mind like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Was it really from Vanessa Blackwood? How would she even have my number? And more importantly, what did she know that I didn't? Meanwhile, Monica had settled into a routine that would have been impressive if it weren't so insulting. She'd leave for work early, come home late, and fill the space between with an elaborate performance of marital normalcy. She'd ask about my day, comment on the weather, and discuss Maddie's grades with the practiced ease of someone reading from a script. The gaslighting started on Thursday. You seem distant lately, she said over dinner, her fork delicately spearing a piece of grilled chicken. Is everything okay? Maddie looked up from her phone, suddenly interested. At 15, our daughter had developed an uncanny ability to sense family tension, like a smoke detector for domestic drama. Everything's fine, I said. Just busy at the shop. You sure? You've been acting, I don't know, paranoid? Like you're watching me all the time. There it was, the word she'd been building toward. Paranoid. Plant the seed, water it with concerned looks and gentle suggestions, and soon everyone would believe that poor David was losing his grip on reality. I'm not paranoid, Monica. I'm observant. What's that supposed to mean? Her voice carried just the right note of hurt confusion. It means I notice things, like how you've been working a lot of late nights lately. The Henderson acquisition is complex. Yeah, you mentioned that. I set down my fork. Funny thing, though. I called your office yesterday around 7. Janine said everyone had gone home hours ago. Monica's face went through a series of micro-expressions, surprise, calculation, then practiced innocence. I wasn't at the office. I was at dinner with the Henderson team. You know, the complex acquisition I've been telling you about? Right, the complex acquisition. Maddie's eyes bounced between us like she was watching a tennis match. Can I be excused? This is getting weird. Of course, sweetie, Monica said, her voice warm with maternal concern. After Maddie left, the temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. I don't appreciate being interrogated in front of our daughter. And I don't appreciate being lied to in front of our daughter. Lied to? David, what's gotten into you? I'm working hard to provide for this family, and instead of being supportive, you're acting like some kind of jealous stalker. Jealous stalker. Another seed for the garden of David's deteriorating mental state. I'm not jealous. I'm concerned about my wife, who's been acting like a stranger for the past 3 months. Monica stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. You know what? I can't do this right now. I have work to do. She retreated to her home office and closed the door. Through the thin walls, I could hear the soft murmur of another phone conversation. More work stuff, no doubt. The Henderson acquisition was apparently a very chatty project. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Monica slept beside me, or pretended to sleep. It was hard to tell the difference anymore. Everything in our house had become performance art, and I was apparently the only one who didn't have a script. Friday morning brought a new development. I was having coffee in the kitchen when Maddie came downstairs, backpack slung over her shoulder and attitude dialed up to 11. Mom says you've been acting weird lately, she announced without preamble. Does she now? She's worried about you. She thinks maybe you should talk to someone. Someone. As in a therapist, as in professional help for poor, delusional David who was imagining things that weren't there. What do you think? I asked. Maddie shrugged. The universal teenage gesture for, I have opinions, but I'm not sharing them with you. I think adults are stupid and make everything complicated. Out of the mouths of babes. Monica appeared in the doorway, already dressed for another day of complex acquisitions. Morning, you two. David, can we talk later? I think we need to clear the air. Sure, I'll be at the shop until 6. Actually, I meant with Dr. Peterson. I made us an appointment for couples counseling. Couples counseling. The final piece of the gaslighting puzzle. Frame the problem as our communication issues, not her infidelity. Make it about David's trust problems, not Monica's lies. That's thoughtful of you, I said, but I think I'll pass. David, please, for Maddie's sake, if not for ours. She can sense the tension. Maddie rolled her eyes. I'm right here, you know, and yeah, I can sense the tension. It's like living in a soap opera. Monica's smile was strained. See, we're affecting our daughter. You're right, I said. We should definitely work on our communication. Relief flooded Monica's face. Great. The appointment is Tuesday at 4. I'll be there. In the meantime, maybe you could help me understand something. Of course. I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made 3 nights ago. Monica's voice filled the kitchen, low and breathy. You're terrible. Ethan, what if someone hears? The silence that followed was deafening. Maddie's eyes went wide. Monica's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally righteous indignation. You recorded me? In our own home? I recorded my wife having phone love with her boss in our kitchen. There's a difference. That's not, you're taking it out of context. What context makes I can't wait either sound professional? Maddie stood up so fast her chair toppled over. Oh my God, Mom, are you cheating on Dad? Of course not. Your father is being paranoid and... Stop. Maddie's voice cut through the room like a blade. Just stop. I'm 15, not 5. I know what cheating sounds like. She grabbed her backpack and headed for the door. I'm walking to school. This is too messed up, even for our family. After Maddie left, Monica and I stared at each other across the kitchen table like rivals in a standoff. You've destroyed our daughter's sense of security, Monica said finally. I've destroyed it? I'm not the one screwing my boss. I'm not screwing anyone. Ethan and I have a professional relationship that involves hotel rooms and midnight phone calls. Monica's composure cracked just enough for me to see the calculation underneath. Have you been following me? Should I not be? She stood up, smoothing down her skirt with hands that shook just slightly. I'm going to work. When I get home, I expect an apology, and I expect you to stop this paranoid behavior before you completely destroy our family. After she left, I sat in the empty kitchen and wondered when my wife had become such an accomplished liar. The Monica I'd married 20 years ago couldn't bluff her way through a game of Go Fish. This version could probably run a con game in Vegas. My phone buzzed. Another text from V. Coffee, we should talk. Starbucks on Maple, 2 p.m. I stared at the message for a long time. Meeting with Vanessa Blackwood would be crossing a line. It would mean admitting that my marriage was beyond salvaging and moving into active warfare. At 1:45, I was sitting in Starbucks, waiting to meet my enemy's wife. Vanessa Blackwood was nothing like I'd expected. I'd imagined some socialite trophy wife, all plastic surgery and designer handbags. Instead, the woman who slid into the chair across from me looked like she could run a Fortune 500 company before lunch and still have energy left to destroy her enemies by dinner. She was elegant in that understated way that screams serious money. Simple black dress, minimal jewelry, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about mortgage payments. But her eyes were what caught my attention. Ice blue and sharp enough to cut glass. "David Mitchell," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I'm Vanessa." "So you're the mysterious V. How did you get my number?" She smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "I have my ways. The question is, what are we going to do about our mutual problem?" Which would be, your wife is sleeping with my husband, I have proof, you have suspicions, and we both have marriages that are being made a mockery of. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photographs. Monica and Ethan entering the Riverside Hotel, leaving together, kissing in the parking garage of Paragon Innovations. The images were crisp, professional quality. This wasn't amateur hour. "You hired a private investigator?" "I hired several. When you have Ethan's resources, you don't take chances with sloppy surveillance." She sipped her coffee like we were discussing the weather. "Your wife is quite photogenic, by the way." I studied the photos, feeling that cold clarity settle in my chest again. "How long have you known?" 3 months. "How long have you suspected?" "About the same. What do you want from me?" Vanessa leaned back in her chair, studying me like I was a chess piece she was considering moving. "I want them to pay, not just for the infidelity, but for thinking they're clever enough to fool us, for treating us like obstacles to be managed instead of people to be respected." "What did you have in mind?" "A dinner party, tomorrow night, my house. You'll bring Monica, I'll provide Ethan. We'll have a lovely evening of suburban hospitality, and then we'll detonate their little fantasy." I had to admire her style. "You want to ambush them?" "I want to watch them squirm. I want them to understand that their actions have consequences. And I want them to know that we're not the naive spouses they think we are." There was something seductive about her plan. The idea of turning the tables, of being the one with the power for once. But it also felt dangerous. "What happens after the dinner party?" "That depends on how they react. But David?" Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "They've underestimated both of us. That's going to be their biggest mistake." The next evening, Monica spent an hour getting ready for dinner at the Blackwoods. She'd been surprised by the invitation. Apparently, Vanessa had called her directly, suggesting it would be good for business relationships, if the couples got to know each other socially. "I can't believe Vanessa Blackwood wants to have dinner with us," Monica said, applying lipstick with surgical precision. "She's like royalty in this town." "Royalty, right." I adjusted my tie in the bedroom mirror. "Should I bow when I meet her?" "Don't be sarcastic, David. This could be important for my career." Her career. Everything came back to that lately. Her career, her ambitions, her professional relationships. I wondered if she'd ever considered how her career moves might affect her marriage, or if that was just collateral damage she was willing to accept. The Blackwood mansion sat on 5 acres in the most exclusive part of Willow Heights, the kind of place where the driveways were longer than most people's commutes. Vanessa answered the door herself, looking effortlessly elegant in a way that probably required a team of stylists. "David! Monica! So wonderful to meet you both." Her smile was perfect, warm, and completely convincing. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed she was genuinely delighted to see us. Ethan appeared beside her, tall and distinguished in his expensive suit. In person, he was even more impressive than he'd looked from across the hotel parking lot. The kind of man who commanded attention without trying, who made other men feel slightly inadequate just by existing. "You must be David," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard so much about you." "I'll bet you have," I thought, but I smiled and shook his hand. "All good things, I hope." "Monica speaks of you often," he said, and I caught the micro glance he shared with my wife, a moment of private communication that excluded everyone else in the room. Vanessa led us through her house, which was decorated with the kind of tasteful restraint that screamed serious money. Original artwork on the walls, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, and fresh flowers arranged with professional precision. Dinner was served in a dining room that could have hosted a state dinner. The conversation flowed easily. Vanessa was a skilled hostess, drawing everyone into discussions about local politics, travel, and mutual acquaintances. Monica was clearly starstruck, hanging on every word and laughing just a little too loudly at Ethan's jokes. I watched them across the table, noting the subtle ways they communicated, the lingering eye contact, The careful way they avoided touching, even accidentally. The shared smiles at private jokes. They thought they were being discreet. They thought they were invisible. "So, David," Ethan said during the main course, "Monica tells me you own an auto repair shop. That must be interesting work." The pause before interesting was perfectly calculated. Just long enough to suggest that he found my career choice quaint, maybe even amusing. "It has its moments," I said. "There's something satisfying about fixing things that are broken, taking something that's not working properly and making it right again." "I'm sure there is," Ethan agreed, "though I imagine it's quite different from the corporate world, less complex." There was that word again. Complex. The catch-all excuse for everything Monica couldn't or wouldn't explain to her simple-minded husband. "Oh, I don't know," I said, cutting into my steak. "Some problems look complex on the surface, but they're actually pretty simple once you understand what's really going on. Usually it comes down to something basic, a loose connection, a part that's not where it should be, something that needs to be removed." Vanessa's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. Monica looked confused, but Ethan's eyes sharpened slightly. He was smart enough to recognize a threat, even a subtle one. "That's a very mechanical way of looking at things," he said. "I'm a very mechanical guy." The conversation moved on, but I could feel the tension building like pressure in a steam engine. Vanessa was playing her role perfectly, the gracious hostess who just happened to ask pointed questions about work schedules and travel plans. Monica and Ethan were growing increasingly uncomfortable, though they were trying to hide it. After dinner, Vanessa suggested we move to the living room for coffee and dessert. The room was dominated by a massive fireplace and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the manicured grounds. It was the kind of room designed to impress, to remind visitors of their host's status and power. "This is such a lovely home," Monica gushed, settling onto an antique sofa that probably cost more than my truck. "Thank you," Vanessa said. "Ethan and I have worked very hard to build something beautiful together, haven't we, darling?" "Of course," Ethan agreed, but there was something strained in his voice now. 22 years of marriage," Vanessa continued, her voice warm with apparent nostalgia. "We've been through everything together. The good times, the challenging times, the times when other people tried to come between us." The room went very quiet. Monica's coffee cup rattled slightly against its saucer. "Other people?" I asked innocently. "Oh, you know how it is in the corporate world," Vanessa said, her smile never wavering. "Ambitious young employees sometimes get ideas. They think they can advance their careers through personal relationships rather than professional merit." Monica's face had gone pale. "I'm not sure what you're suggesting." "I'm not suggesting anything, dear. I'm stating facts." Vanessa reached into her purse and pulled out a tablet. With a few swipes, she'd pulled up a photo gallery that made Monica gasp audibly. The photos were even more incriminating than the ones she'd shown me. Monica and Ethan in passionate embraces, entering hotel rooms, sharing private dinners at restaurants across town. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. "You see," Vanessa continued conversationally, "when you suspect your husband is having an affair, you have two choices. You can confront him directly and give him a chance to lie to you, or you can gather evidence and present him with facts he can't dispute." Ethan had gone very still, like a predator trying to decide whether to fight or flee. "Vanessa, this is what, darling? Surprising? I thought you'd be impressed by my initiative. After all, you're always telling me how important it is to be thorough in business." Monica was staring at the photos like they were evidence of her own homicide. They're taken out of context." "Context," I repeated. "That's interesting. What context makes this look professional?" I leaned forward to point at a particularly revealing photo. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife is screwing her boss in a hotel room." "David, please," Monica whispered. "Please what? Please pretend I don't know? Please act like everything is normal while you destroy our family?" The facade was cracking now. Monica's composure was crumbling, and Ethan looked like a man who'd just realized he'd walked into a trap. "Look," Ethan said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he probably used in board meetings. "I think we're all adults here. These things happen. Marriages go through rough patches. People find connections where they can." "Connections," Vanessa repeated. "Is that what we're calling it? What I'm saying is that we can handle this maturely, discreetly. There's no need for anyone to get hurt." I laughed, and the sound was harsh in the elegant room. No need for anyone to get hurt? What do you think has been happening for the past 3 months? David's right, Vanessa said. People have been getting hurt. Specifically, the people you two thought were too stupid to figure out what you were doing. Monica finally found her voice. It's not what you think. Ethan and I, we have a connection, yes, but it's not just physical. We understand each other in ways that your spouses don't, I finished. Is that what you were going to say? That you and Ethan have some special bond that transcends your marriage vows? You don't understand, Monica said, and there was desperation in her voice now. You've never understood me, David, my ambitions, my dreams, what I need to feel fulfilled. What you need to feel fulfilled is apparently my wife, Vanessa said to Ethan. How flattering for her. How devastating for me. The confrontation that followed was brutal and beautiful in its honesty. 20 years of buried resentments came pouring out, along with accusations, justifications, and the kind of truth that burns everything it touches. Monica accused me of being complacent, unambitious, emotionally unavailable. I accused her of being selfish, dishonest, and cruel. Ethan tried to position himself as the innocent party who'd been swept up in forces beyond his control. Vanessa dismantled that fiction with surgical precision. By the time it was over, both marriages lay in ruins on Vanessa's Persian rug, and Monica was crying mascara-stained tears into her napkin. I think, Vanessa said into the silence, that we've said everything that needs to be said tonight. Monica and I drove home in complete silence. When we pulled into our driveway, she finally spoke. What happens now? I sat in the driver's seat, staring at our house, our perfect suburban house with its perfect lawn and its perfectly destroyed interior life. Now, I said, now we stop pretending. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took 3 days of Monica's tears, 2 days of her anger, and 1 day of her desperate attempts at reconciliation before I fully embraced what I was becoming. She'd moved into the guest bedroom temporarily while we figured things out. The house felt different with this new arrangement, like a stage set where all the actors had forgotten their lines. Maddie moved through the space like a ghost, earbuds permanently attached, avoiding both of us with the practiced skill of a teenager who'd seen too much adult drama. On Tuesday morning, I made coffee for 1 instead of 2. Small change, but it felt revolutionary. Monica appeared in the kitchen at 7:30, dressed for work but moving with the careful precision of someone walking through a minefield. We need to talk, she said. Do we? About what happens next, about Maddie, about... She gestured helplessly at the space between us. About this. I sipped my coffee and studied my wife's face. Without the armor of her usual confidence, she looked younger, more vulnerable. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, almost. What did you want to discuss? I think we should try counseling. Real counseling. Not the ambush you planned with that woman. That woman. As if Vanessa had been the architect of Monica's betrayal rather than simply the messenger who delivered the news. Vanessa didn't make you sleep with Ethan. Monica flinched. I know that. But she manipulated the situation, used you to what? Tell the truth? Expose your affair? Hold you accountable for your choices? To humiliate me? To destroy my career? Her career, always back to that. Your career destroyed itself the moment you decided to sleep with your boss. I just provided the audience. Monica's face hardened. You're enjoying this. Should I not be? Should I be devastated that my wife has been lying to me for months? Should I be crying into my coffee because the woman I trusted most in the world has been making a fool of me? I never meant for it to happen, but it did happen, repeatedly, in hotel rooms and parking garages, and probably in Ethan's office after hours. It happened, Monica, and now we have to deal with the consequences. She sat down across from me, her hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't actually filled with coffee. What do you want from me? What would it take to fix this? The question hung in the air between us like smoke from a house fire. What did I want? Forgiveness? Revenge? A time machine that could take us back to before everything went wrong? I want you to understand something, I said finally. This isn't just about the affair. It's about the lying, the gaslighting, the way you made me feel crazy for noticing what was right in front of my face. You were trying to protect yourself and your relationship with Ethan and your precious career. You weren't protecting me or Maddie or our marriage. You were protecting your ability to have everything you wanted without consequences. Monica's composure cracked. So what then? We just throw away 20 years because I made a mistake? A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. This was a choice, a series of choices. And now I get to make some choices of my own. That afternoon, I drove to downtown Willow Heights and had a very interesting conversation with Marcus Webb, the lawyer who'd handled the incorporation of my business 5 years earlier. Marcus was the kind of attorney who specialized in making problems disappear, quietly, efficiently, and with minimal collateral damage to his clients. Divorce? He asked, leaning back in his leather chair. Eventually. But first, I want to understand my options. Assets, custody, business protection. The whole landscape. Marcus pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. Any infidelity involved? I slid Vanessa's photos across his desk. Extensive documentation. He whistled softly as he flipped through the images. This is thorough. Professional-grade surveillance. Your wife's attorney is going to have a hard time arguing against this. What about my business? Mitchell's Auto Repair is a sole proprietorship, correct? Established before your marriage? Started it with money I inherited from my grandfather. Monica never had any involvement in the day-to-day operations. That helps. Illinois is an equitable distribution state, but adultery can influence the court's decision, especially when it comes to spousal support. We spent the next hour going through the details, bank accounts, property deeds, investment portfolios, 20 years of shared financial life, laid out in columns and calculations. It was depressing how easily a marriage could be reduced to spreadsheet data. One more thing, I said as I prepared to leave. I want to know everything about Ethan Blackwood. Business dealings, personal finances, anything that might be useful. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Planning something specific? Planning to level the playing field. That evening, I called Ricky Martinez, my oldest friend and former police detective who now ran a private investigation firm. We'd grown up together in Willow Heights, back when it was more middle class than suburban paradise. Ricky had seen me through my awkward teenage years, my wedding day, and now, apparently, the collapse of my marriage. Jesus, Dave, he said after I'd filled him in on the situation. Monica really went nuclear, didn't she? She went somewhere. I'm just trying to figure out where that leaves me. What do you need? Information, background checks, financial records. I want to know everything about Ethan Blackwood and his business dealings. You thinking about going after him professionally? I'm thinking about exploring all my options. Ricky was quiet for a moment. You sure about this path, man? Once you start down this road, it's hard to come back. The road back was destroyed the moment Monica decided to screw her boss. Now I'm just choosing which direction to go forward. All right, give me a week. The week that followed was the strangest of my life. Monica and I moved around each other like polite strangers, maintaining the fiction of normalcy for Maddie's sake. We discussed schedules and household logistics with the careful courtesy of people who no longer trusted each other with anything important. Monica threw herself into work with renewed intensity, leaving early and coming home late. Whether she was still seeing Ethan or just avoiding me was unclear, but I found I didn't much care either way. The emotional connection that had once made her absence painful had been severed as cleanly as a cut wire. Maddie, meanwhile, was processing the situation with the brutal honesty that only teenagers can manage. So are you guys getting divorced? She asked over pizza on Friday night. Monica was at another late work meeting, leaving us to navigate the conversation alone. Probably. Good. I looked up from my slice, surprised. Good? Dad, you guys have been miserable for months, maybe years. I'm not blind. She picked a piece of pepperoni off her pizza and ate it separately. Plus, Mom cheated on you, which is pretty much unforgivable. It's complicated, kiddo. No, it's not. She lied to you, she lied to me, and she got caught. Now she's trying to make it seem like it's somehow your fault for finding out. Maddie shook her head. I love Mom, but she screwed up. Big time. Out of the mouths of babes. Ricky called the following Tuesday with preliminary results. Your boy Ethan has been a busy man, he said. 3 affairs in the past 5 years, all with employees. His wife has filed for separation twice, but never followed through with divorce. What else? Paragon Innovations is in more trouble than they're letting on. The Henderson acquisition Monica keeps talking about? It's not happening. The deal fell through 6 weeks ago, but they haven't announced it publicly yet. Stock's going to tank when the news breaks. How do you know all this? I have friends in interesting places, but here's the really good part. Ethan's been cooking the books to hide the company's losses. SEC investigation is already underway. They're just keeping it quiet until they have enough evidence to file charges. I felt that familiar, cold clarity settling in my chest. How long before this becomes public? Month, maybe 2. But Dave, if your wife is still working there when the hammer falls, she's going to be collateral damage. HR knew about the financial irregularities and didn't report them. Monica wasn't just cheating on me. She was potentially complicit in corporate fraud. The woman who'd spent months making me feel paranoid and unstable was about to lose everything, her job, her reputation, possibly her freedom. I should have felt sorry for her. Instead, I felt something much more dangerous. I felt powerful. That night, I made a decision that would have horrified the man I'd been 6 months earlier. I called Vanessa. "David," she said, her voice warm with what sounded like genuine pleasure. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you. I have information you might find interesting about Ethan and Paragon Innovations." "I'm listening." I told her everything Ricky had discovered, the failed acquisition, the SEC investigation, the pattern of affairs. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You realize what this means?" she said finally. "It means Ethan is about to lose everything. His job, his reputation, possibly his freedom. And your wife along with him. My wife made her choices." "Yes," Vanessa said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "She did. The question is, what are you going to do with this information?" "I was hoping you might have some ideas." "As a matter of fact, I do. Why don't you come over tomorrow evening? I think it's time we planned the second act of our little drama." As I hung up the phone, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. The man looking back at me was someone I barely recognized, harder, colder, more calculating than the David Mitchell who'd been changing oil and fixing transmissions just 2 weeks earlier. Monica had called me paranoid. She'd suggested I needed therapy, that I was losing touch with reality. She was wrong on all counts. I wasn't losing touch with reality. I was finally learning how to shape it.